When I was falling, you caught me when I was falling. You rescued me from my enemies. You remembered me, 'cause I know your name, your name. You satisfy me. Your name is Yahuah, name above all names. You remember me, oh. Nobody can you got me standing on. Say his name, everybody. Come on. Mama, somebody love. To what is me, Yahuah. We esteem your name, Abba. Who is? Yeah. With all life, you satisfy me. You said. Sovereign one, ancient of days, set apart is your name. And humbly I seek your face. How I need all of you. You fill my soul with life brand new. Everlasting daily bread is you. Oh, yes. Today I give all that I am, my heart, my will, my deepest desire. You're all I need, your breath I breathe, my daily bread. You're always Yahuah, Yahuah, Quelina kuhitaji ipe maisha Let's praise him today. Give him thanks today. Today I give all that I am, my heart, my will, my deepest desire. You're all I need, your breath I breathe, my daily bread. You're always Yahuah, Yahuah, lead me to that secret place where I meet you face to face. There's no place I'd rather be than to worship at your feet. Lead me to that secret place where I meet you face to face. You and me, Father. Today I give all that I am, my heart, my will, my deepest desire. You're all I need, your breath I breathe, my daily bread. You're always Yahuah, Yahuah, Yahuah.
Allahu Yahuah. I want to say shalom to you all, family. I almost said Shabbat Shalom there. Just want to say shalom to you all. It is great to be here on this evening. It is great to see each and every one of you, and truly thankful to know that Yahuah has brought us safely together once again. And we're getting ready to begin. But I want to introduce to you, Mashbaka, a song by Aki Patrick. Aki Patrick, who is in London, England. He joins us sometimes here in the room when he can. He used to join us every Shabbat, but he's had some challenges lately that prohibits him joining us as frequently as he would like to. But Aki Patrick, he's just a wonderful Aki, and I did not know that he was so gifted, that Yahuah had so gifted him, with the gift of praise, the ability to sing the way he does. And so he has, I understand that he has about 3 songs that's recorded, but I only have one of them here this evening, and I'd like to share it with the room. And so I'm going to be playing that one next. This is Aki Patrick coming up next. Okay, so here we go. Aki Patrick. Let me get it started from beginning.
mighty, what a mighty Yah we serve. What a mighty, what a mighty, what a mighty, what a mighty Yah we serve. Messengers bow before him. Shemaiah and earth adore him. Oh, what a mighty Yah we serve. Yahuah, yes, Yah we serve. Yahuah, yes, Yah we serve. Messengers, they bow before him. Shemaiah and earth adore him. Oh, birds and all animals adore him. Yes, what a mighty Yah we serve. Yes, what a mighty Yah we serve. Oh, what a mighty Yah we serve. Yes, what a mighty Yah we serve. Yes, God, what a mighty, and serve him with us. What a mighty Yah.
Hallelujah. Praise Yahuah. Okay, that was a key, Patrick, and again, I don't know how to find all of his songs yet, but I truly enjoy listening to my Aki singing. It is indeed a baraka, and when I find the rest of them, I'll share them with the family, and I'll continue to share them here in the room. But indeed, he is a mighty Yah that we serve. Halal Yahuwah. I'm just delighted. I did not know that Aki Patrick was gifted in that way, and so it is just a baraka. And I look forward to sharing the rest of them with you, family. There is one that he sings. Um, I he's really calling out to Yasharal, and it's just something to listen to. But I look forward to sharing the rest of them with you, and it is my hope that that one was a baraka to you. Well, Shabbat Shalom sorry, not Shabbat Shalom, but Shalom to you all, family. And I want to say uh, Lela Tube, or a good evening to you also on this evening. It is great to be here. Praise Father Akut Carmen. Yes, indeed, I enjoyed it also. His voice mellow. It's just really good. Praise Yahuwah. Okay, so great to be here. Um, and so what we're going to do is we're going to open up here in prayer, and this evening we're going to be continuing in our reading of the book, A History of the Jews, and we want to reserve some time also for any questions or comments as we continue in our reading. Want to cut anyone off if you have any questions or comments, but I do look forward to picking up in the book that we have been reading. We did quite a bit. We read a little last week, discussed quite a bit, and so we're looking forward to continuing. We're reading from the book A History of the Jews by Solomon Grazel, and of course, as we go through the book, we're correcting the myths. I'm using this book to expose, to show just how our identity have been stolen, how our history have been hijacked, and so as we go through the book, we dispel the myths, and see we also see how the hypocrisy, how some things that people don't have any trouble saying when it is in terms of the Jews. If you're speaking in terms of the true people of the book, a melanated people, the seed of Abraham, Yashar Al, then things that people would not normally have any trouble pointing out, it becomes an issue when we say it. You see, last week we looked at some of that hypocrisy. We looked here in the book, it talked about the Romans and the Roman Catholic Church, even the people in high places and people in other parts of Europe. According to this book, it talked about how ignorant they were. And according to this book, it was the Jews who educated them. Now, we know, though, that the historical truth is that it wasn't the Jews. Here in the book, they say the Jews, but it wasn't the Jews who did this education. It was actually the people of Yasharal. Now, though, if we say that, if the actual people, if the true people of the book make such a statement, then people will call you racist and so on. Maybe I'll take a minute here this evening also racism, to define racism. I want to take a minute, I think, as we get into this, to define racism. Okay, so I'm going to take a moment to do that, because you know what happens. I believe it's important to do that for a couple of reasons. One, for the sake of our family who are coming out of the church and coming into the truth, and when you come out of the church, when you first leave the church, you really it's not until Yahuah really begin to, because yes, Yahuah grabbed our attention in the church and he caused us to realize that there are some things that are wrong, but we don't get the full picture yet. But the problem is that I believe all of us have fell victim to this, because he began to open our eyes. Initially, we think that we get the full picture. Initially, we think that we have an understanding, and it's not until we journey a little bit further, and then more of the lies begin to be exposed to us, and then we begin to see just how we have been deceived. I'm sorry about the dings. I got to change the settings. I didn't change these settings. I don't know why it's doing it now, but I've got to change the settings so that when somebody come in or leave, you don't hear all of that dinging. But yeah, so the perception, sometimes when you first come into the truth, excuse me, Shah, when you first come into a knowledge of the truth, it things, simple truths that are stated, for the person who is not yet quite knowledgeable of the facts, they might perceive it as racist or something like that. And so I want to define racism, but not just for the people coming out, not for our people just waking up, but also for other people, you see, for foreigners who, when certain truths are spoken, they perceive it as being racist. I've been called a racist so many times. I've been called a racist by people just because I said that the Jews are not the people of the book. They call you a racist. You see, is that racism? Is that how racism is defined? So as we get into the rest of this, and you're going to see how isms play a role in this history, racisms and all kinds of isms. So I want to define racism as we continue in this book. We're going to talk about that for a moment. I see Aki Keenan's flag is up, so I'm going to go ahead and go to you, Aki. Please go ahead, Aki Keenan.
Shalom, Mishpakai.
Shalom, shalom to you, Aki. I got all kinds of noises going on here.
The bells and whistles. Huh?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Hey, well, racism. That the ism. We know that the isms is always attached with a double meaning.
Yes.
With ideology, idea,
Mhm.
and a system to back it.
Yes, indeed.
So so if they really want to see what racism is, then look at like capitalism,
That's right.
socialism,
Yes.
that kind of stuff. An
Yes.
idea attached to a system that's
Yes.
put in place to apply that idea and have it function throughout a civilization.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Aki, say that one more time for anyone listening to hear, and for those who will come later and hear this recording. If you could say that one more time for me, because that is the very foundational fact of racism that you just mentioned there. If you could say that again, Aki.
Yeah. Okay. Racism has a dual meaning, which is an ideology, an idea attached to a system that perpetuates that idea, and it functions throughout a civilization.
Mm.
So that's basically what it is.
Yes.
And so that's what we got. Yeah, and the sad thing is that, as we know, that racism didn't even start until sometime in the mid 1800s in America.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
It was never throughout world history, ancient history.
That's right.
Because because it was, so they can't say white supremacy always exists, because it never was. Because if that was the case, then the Greeks and the Romans, and more so the Romans, would have institutionalized white supremacy. But the Romans separated themselves from the rest of the doggone Europeans.
That's right. That's right.
So but people, the people in America, man, it's just that if you grow up in America, then our mind has been so polluted and lied and twisted, and that it's if Yahuah hasn't touched us in our mind, we can't come out of it. That's all to it, man. Because that's that demonic spirit. Anytime I mention the term spirit, then demonic is attached to it. And
yes.
Anytime I say ruach, then I know that's attached to Yahuah.
Yes.
But wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities and so forth.
Indeed.
And that's what a lot of people don't pay attention to.
Indeed, Aki, indeed, and to the for sharing that. Before I leave you, was there anything else, Aki, that you wanted to share before I leave?
No.
Okay, to the well said, Aki, well spoken, and praise Yahuah. I just want to echo what Aki Keenan just stated, that racism is a twofold system. I might be saying it a little bit different than he said it, but hopefully you understand that what I'm saying is the same thing. Racism is a twofold system. So it is a system. It is a belief coupled with a system developed to suppress people of another or other so-called races. You cannot have racism without a functioning system of oppression. You see, you can have uh, you can have a racist, okay, somebody who hates another person based on their looks, their so-called race. And I say so-called race because the whole idea of race, as a Keenan just pointed out, the whole idea of race did not come about until the 18th century, the mid 18th century, brought to you by America and some folks in Britain, and then the rest of Europe joined in. Before then, there was no race. You know, there is not a word, for example, even among the Indians. To this very day, the Indians have no word for race. No word for race. The Indians have no word for race. Okay? In the scriptures, you find nothing said about race. There is nothing spoken about race because the scriptures does not speak about race. It speaks about nationality, nations, not race. Nations were not formed based on race, you see. And so racism basically is a system implemented to suppress other people based on their perceived or their assigned race, you see. And so that was instituted for the benefit of another ideology that was developed, and that is the ideology of white power. Now, white power. Okay, give me just a second, please. Now, white power at one time all across the world, it was nationalized. White power was nationalized. That means that once the white race was invented, not created, but invented. Once the white race was invented, and then the other races also were invented. Once that was invented, it was the belief of the so-called white person that they were created, and this belief was taught to everybody that they came in contact with. It was the belief of the so-called, I said so-called because it's an invented ideology. It was the belief, and still is the belief of some, maybe even many, that the so-called white race is supposed to rule over every other race. And so the system was put in place to ensure that that message gets carried out, and that the ideology, I like to say the ideology of that system of thinking. And so everything from the way maps were drawn to the way history was retold, to the way people, non-whites were educated, were predicated upon this system, supremacy. So at one time, even here in America and wherever in Europe you went, once racism was invented, white people as a whole believed sincerely using the Bible. They believed sincerely they were created to dominate the world and that they were far superior than anything else and anyone else. As a matter of fact, nobody else was a person but them. Everybody else were either part animals or total animals, savages, and so on. And so that belief system continues to today. So as we continue here, I want to define racism, and Keenan is so eloquently defined it for us. And that's the foundation. That's the basic thing. When we talk about racism, we need to understand that first and foremost, that you cannot have racism without a system. You cannot have racism without a system. That's right, Akut Amuna. Absolutely. Now think about this, family. Think about this. You know, if you're like me, because of the propaganda machine called Hollywood, yeah, the propaganda machine called Hollywood. The propaganda machine called Hollywood is very much responsible for a whole for the way that our people think and process information or fail to process information. Hollywood is responsible. Yes, responsible. 90% responsible for our ignorance. Okay? Hollywood is 90% responsible for ignorance. The printing presses, television, and radio is responsible, and Sunday school. The printing presses, television, radio, and Sunday school is responsible for the other 10%. Okay? Hollywood is responsible for 90% of our ignorance, while the printing presses, television, radio, and Sunday school is responsible for the other 10% of our dumbing down. If it was not for Hollywood, our people would not grow up for so many generations believing in fictions. If it was not for imagery on television and in books and shown to us in Sunday school, our people, the deception would have not taken hold to the extent that it did. And the machine, the system. So you see, racism is a system built on what? Built on propaganda. Racism is a system from its very inception built on propaganda. Propaganda. Okay? Propaganda. The system, the foundation of the system is propaganda. And then from there, they create institutions for the oppression of others. Okay? So our people now, this is how this has affected our people because of all the imagery that our people have seen over the years from Hollywood, in Sunday school, on television. Or remember when they used to have those little what you call them? They call it theater radio, like you know, stories you would hear on the radio, but it would almost before TV, you know, it would almost be like you're watching a show, but they're like stories that they do on the radio. They have a name for that. I don't remember what it is. But yes, go ahead, Aki.
Well, I know what you're talking about, but the main narrator was Orson Welles.
Yes, yes, yes. So they would use these things, and they would use it, and even with listening, even in listening to these, number one, the people that you would hear on all of these narrations and in these plays that you're hearing, that you can visualize as you're listening to it, it's done in such a way that you can visualize it. You would not hear anybody that sound like you or look like you. The stories that are being told would not include you. You see, would not include you. Yes, stories like that. And so you have been conditioned to think of yourself and to think of your people. Yes, they painted a very vivid mental imagery. And the conditioning, the propaganda was working. The television imagery, the propaganda was in effect. And they know this, and it has worked well. And so our people have had a long history of being dumbed down. And so now when we're faced with the facts, it is difficult for our people to embrace it. You see, and so when people begin to come to a knowledge of the truth, there are two things. And again, when we have been in church for so long and we begin to awaken, family, I know for me, I thought that once my eyes began to open to the fact that Christmas wasn't real and Easter wasn't real and this holiday and that holiday wasn't real, that they were pagan, I thought, man, I thought pretty much, you know what, man, I know the truth now. And I thought I really had it. I had a handle on the truth for a minute there. I thought I did. But it wasn't until Yahuah continued to reveal and show me, no, a lot of what you think you know, you really don't know. It took a while for me to realize that, and then I realized, you know what, man, you're probably better off talking less and listening more. Because after I came to the knowledge that Christmas and Easter and all of those were, and then now,
they had nothing to do with initiation.
Yeah, and then now I begin to hear a narrative that of the book are not the people that we have been told that they are. That was not so easy of a pill for me to swallow. And I begin to think that the people saying this stuff were racist. Now, why would I think that? Family, for most people come to this, when you're encountered with this, you are trained, subliminally trained. You don't realize that all this time you've been in training to deny yourself in a bad way. But you're subliminally trained to kick against the facts when it comes to who you are. You have been conditioned. And so when I am approached now about the identity of the people, I begin to make excuses. The scripture says that we're all created in his image. In Timothy, it says that we should not argue about genealogy. We make all those arguments. And when somebody continued to try to explain to us that, well, that's not what that text is saying. That's not what those texts are saying, not the way you're putting it. When somebody tried to explain that to us, then we turn around and we say that person is a racist and that person is practicing racism. That person's practicing racism and that person's a racist. And there it go again. There our ignorance is revealed. Right? Because again, as Aki Keenan pointed out, Racism can only be practiced where there is a system of oppression in place, a system designed to oppress another race, another so-called race, because again, the idea of race only came about in the 1800s. So a people who does not have a system to enforce their ideological bias cannot practice racism. Yes, they can be racist, so-called racist, but they can't practice racism because racism is twofold. It's hatred, ideological hatred, coupled with a system built on hatred to oppress and to suppress others who don't look like you. Okay? So when we begin to come out of the church, because of how we have been conditioned, because of how we have been trained by the pastors and by Christianity, when we are faced with the facts, a lot of times we're tempted to not realizing what we're doing really because we've been so conditioned. We're tempted when the truth is spoken, we're tempted to declare it to be racist. But what's amazing again is you can say the same thing about another race, so-called race, and it is not racist. But if it is said about a people who are the true people of the book, then all of a sudden the same statement becomes racist, even to our own people. But that's the conditioning, yes? The conditioning and the indoctrination, you see. So it is important because, I've been called a racist many times. I've been. There's a recording somewhere out there several years ago, probably about 5 years ago. I went on this radio program, an internet radio program with these. I went on this program with this lady. She was Jewish. And several of the people that did the program with her were Jewish. I believe the name of the radio program, it was a popular radio program. They would come on twice a week on the internet. But I believe the name of it was Yahweh's Watchmen or something like that. It was called the radio program. I believe something like that it was called. So I was posting some stuff about the 501c3 church, the church and 501 and its 501c3 status, and they came across the videos that I had on YouTube, and they invited me to come on the program to discuss the 501c3 status and the church. And so I went on the program to discuss that. And for a little while there, me and they, me and them, or however you say it, things were going quite well. But then one day, I had to bring up the subject of the identity of the people. And when I did, just instantly and immediately, it's like flipping on a light, a switch. And they began to call me all kinds of racists. I mean, they started a campaign on Facebook for a little bit against me there, blocked me, told me off. I mean, they called me on and told their people all kinds of stuff about me. I'm guessing they probably took down the recording from that radio from that radio program they invited me on. But I was a racist. I was a cult. I was everything because I brought up the subject of the identity of the people from the scriptures. You see, so everything was fine before I began to talk about the identity of the people. And when I brought up the subject, I didn't bring it up trying to, you know, put them down or trying to be divisive. I just brought it up for the sake of truth, you see. And the way I look at it is, you know, if you're willing to embrace the truth, I don't care what you look like. I don't care who you are. If you're a friend of the truth, then you're a friend of mine. That's the way I see it. If you're a friend of the truth, I will fight for you just like I will fight for my children. You see, if you're a friend of the truth, you're a friend of mine. I don't care what you look like. I don't care where you come from. If you're a friend of the truth, you're a friend of mine. That's just me. You see. Now, if you are a foe of the truth, if you are an enemy of the truth, and where I see that you hate the truth, you have no interest in the truth, and I don't want anything to do with you. You see, I have no desire to be associated with you. But I just bring that up to say how quickly things change when you begin to talk about the truth of who the people are and how quick people label you as racist. You see, so we talk about racism and the definition of racism, but what about racist? Is it valid for somebody to come out and say, simply because you're talking about the identity of the people of the scriptures? Shalom to you, Aki Dela Yahu. It is great to see you, Aki. I'm doing great, and I believe I can't speak for everyone else, but I believe it's safe to say everyone else is. It is great to see you, Aki. So, is it fair for simply bringing up the truth, the fact? Again, we're talking about the conditioning that have affected us. Is it fair for people to smear you as a racist because you dare to and choose to proclaim the truth concerning the identity of the people of the scriptures? Does that in itself qualify somebody as a racist? The fact is no. Now, the truth of the matter is that you can find people out there, people who are people of Yasharal, maybe, but they're certainly speaking. Well, a lot of them still not using the name of Yahuah. They're still calling on God and Jesus and everything else. But yet, you find people out there who really they're quite racist. Yes, they're proclaiming the fact of who the people are, but they're also doing it in a very racist way. You know, they're proclaiming that if you are white, quote unquote white, there is no place for you in the kingdom, and all the stuff that's going to happen to you, and that's really not what the scriptures say. Again, Yahuah did not create race and does not look at race. Yahuah looks at the heart, right? Yahuah examines the heart and the intent of a man. And so at the end of the day, your skin color does not put you in the kingdom, and it does not exclude you from the kingdom. What put you in the kingdom or what exclude you from the kingdom is your heart content. You see, at the end of the day. So yes, there are some people out there who are no different than the Nazis in their doctrine, the Aryans, even the Christians, and even the Jews. Because while some people might be quick to label some people as racist, the fact of the matter is that Christianity was founded upon racism. Christianity was founded upon racism. The doctrines of Christianity was founded upon racist ideology and bonded in racism. Okay? And so you have doctrines like the curse of Ham, which is a worldwide Christian teaching and belief that black people came about because Ham was cursed, right? And so that's the doctrine of the curse of Ham, and Judaism teaches the same thing. And you find it in Christian books today still. I have a book right here, right now on this shelf, where when you look up Ham, it tells you about the curse of Ham and how he became black. This is a book used by pastors, used in seminary. You see, the curse of Ham. When you look at the books, the Christian books, you see that from day one, from Sunday school, when you turn to their pictures in the books, you see Adam and Eve, so-called Adam and Eve, not her name, but Adam and so-called Eve. They're white. Everything in the book is white. You see, and racist. But if others do it, it's racist. So the whole point that I'm trying to get at as we prepare to continue our reading is to get the point across that we have to understand that all of us have been conditioned. You know, a lot of so-called white people do not realize that a lot of what they have believed and have been taught, that it's actually lies. They really don't realize it. And it wasn't in the interest of their teachers to tell them that what they're telling them are lies, because they don't want them to know that it's a lie, because they don't want there to be a bit of doubt in their mind, because they want them to live it out as if it's their real history. And if they live it as if it's their real history, then they will be more forceful in defending it, in defending the lie, and in protecting the lie. Go ahead, Aki.
Yes, Aki. I don't have a question, but just a statement to say that, you know, in not Revelations, but what we call it, Chetam.
Yeah.
Now it's stated. Is it Chetam or is it Yahuah? One of them, I forgot. Where it says that Hashatan has deceived the whole world, and so, and on that note, you think people would, you know, sit down and try to figure out, you know, in what kind of way has he deceived the whole world?
Mm-hmm.
You think they would ask that question? But they, you know, just like most of the scripture, they dismiss, you know, prudent, you know, question, you know, things, certain verses that they really should pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, just like when Yahusha said, "I come in my Father's name, you receive me not." Another comes in his own.
Yes.
And you don't receive.
Yes.
You know, like those two right there in itself should get people to really sit down and try to figure out what is the, you know, our Father, what is Abba Yahuah is really, what does he say?
Yes.
But they dismiss it, they overlook it and move on and looking for something to tickle their ears.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, Aki. Very, very, very great point indeed. And it's just the fact. So they won't even ask, won't even ask. But again, we have been conditioned not to ask questions, right? And then in turn, we do it to our kids. And so it continues for generations, you know. We do it, yeah, we do it to our kids. And so if they dare ask a question, we shut them up. Don't ask me no question. Just do it. Just do it. Why? Because I say so. That's not good enough. That's how we have been conditioned. That's what keep us ignorant and in lies. Anybody will tell you that the way to learn is to ask questions if they're interested in you learning. And they'll also let you know, they'll also comfort you, reassure you if they really want you to learn. They'll reassure you by letting you know that there are no foolish questions. So if there's something that you don't understand, do not hesitate to ask, because if you don't understand and you're thinking, well, it's a stupid question, I'm not going to ask it, therefore you don't ask it, then you're going to leave not understanding, not knowing, and still ignorant. You see? So if they want you to learn, they're going to say, listen, there are no stupid questions. Okay? Because they have an interest in making sure that you have clarity concerning whatever it is that you're trying to understand. That's right. The only foolish question is the one that is not asked. You see. And so absolutely. And there may be someone else who will benefit from the question, right? Yeah, so we have to understand how the deception has, how this thing has taken root. And again, recognize that according to the scriptures, we have inherited many great lies. We have inherited many great lies. And the biggest mistake that we can make is to think that we have come to the end of the rabbit's trail when perhaps we're just only beginning, you see. And so the key is to continue to seek, continue to be humble, continue to be open, continue to question, never stop asking why. I used to always emphasize that, when we study and when we ponder anything, the way to gain true understanding is really to seek out the context. And the only way you're going to find the context is by asking who, what, where, when, how, why. You see, whom, of whom, by whom, to whom, so on and so forth. So we got to be willing to ask the questions. All right. All right. So we're going to dive into it here, family. So we talk about racism, what racism is. Now, a racist is a person, and again, let me emphasize this again, the idea of race did not come about until the mid 1800s. There is a BBC documentary, a well put together documentary done by BBC. I have it in one of my playlists on YouTube. I don't remember which one. Maybe The Real Black History or some one of the playlists that I have on YouTube. But in this playlist, I have this documentary done by the BBC on race. And it tells you the history of the creation of quote unquote race. You see, this is the BBC. And it's telling you who created it. It talk about the so-called founding father, George Washington, his role also. He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He was one of the, how should I put it? He first. He was one of the first pioneers of this idea of race, and the rest to follow behind him. You see, this documentary lay out these facts, but the fact of the matter is that a lot of people are not aware of these things. So, who is a racist? A racist is, again, now a person who hates somebody else simply because of the color of their skin. You know, that's a racist. You hate somebody simply because of the color of their skin. Now, it's one thing to hate somebody, but it's another thing to have a system in place that will allow you now to disenfranchise that person that you hate.
Give me that.
Yep, prejudice or discrimination, absolutely. Simply hate somebody, but it's another thing to have a system put in place to disenfranchise, to suppress, to disenfranchise, to suppress, and to oppress the person that you hate. I'm going to go. I see the flag up. Aki Rob and the Kuchar. Shalom to you, Mashpaka, and welcome. Microphone is yours, Mashpaka.
Jeremiah.
Have you heard?
Yes, you can, Aki. Shalom to you. Great to hear you on this evening, Aki Rob.
Always my pleasure, Keith. You know, it's ironic you talked about George Washington. We have a new finance director at my job, and me and him got into a very lengthy conversation, and started talking about Yahuah and Yahusha to me. And so, needless to say, we've gotten very close over his duration of work.
Yeah.
And he provided me with a letter from George Washington to Muhammad Abab Abdullah, who was the Sultan of Morocco. And this was written December 1st of 1789. And basically, the letter, and I'll read it if you like, but
yes, please do, Aki. Please do.
Okay. It says, now keep in mind, be cognizant, this is from George Washington
Yes.
to the Sultan of Morocco, who was a black man.
Yes.
Great and magnanimous friend. Since the date of the letter, which the late Congress, by their president, addressed to you, Imperial Majesty, the United States of America have thought proper to change their government and institute a new one agreeable to the Constitution, of which I have the honor herewith to enclose a copy. The time necessarily employed in the arduous task and disarrangement occasioned by so great, though peaceable a revolution, will apologize and account for your Majesty not having received those regularly advised marks of attention from the United States, which the friendship and magnanimity of your conduct toward them afforded reason to expect. The United States, having unanimously appointed me to supreme executive superiority in this nation, your Majesty's letter of August 17, 1788, which by reason of the dissolution of the late government remained unanswered, has been delivered to me. I have also received the letters which your Imperial Majesty has been so kind as to write in favor of the United States to the behaviors of Tunis and Tripoli, and I present to you the sincere acknowledgments and thanks of the United States for this important mark of your friendship for them. We greatly regret the hostile disposition of those regencies towards this nation who have never injured them is not to be removed on terms of our power to comply with. Within the territories there are no mines, whether of gold or silver, and this young nation, just recovering from the waste and disillusion of a long war, have not as yet had time to acquire riches by agriculture or commerce. But our soil is bountiful and our people industrious, and we have reason to flatter ourselves that we shall gradually become useful to our friends. The encouragement which your majesty has been pleased generously to give to our commerce with your dominions, the punctuality with which you have caused the treaty with us to be observed, and the just and generous measures taken for the case of Captain Proctor made a deep impression on the United States and confirmed their respect for and attachment to your imperial majesty. It gives me great pleasure to have the opportunity of assuring your majesty that while I remain at the head of this nation, I shall not cease to promote every measure that may conduce to the friendship and harmony which so happily subsists between your empire and them, and shall esteem myself happy in every occasion of convincing your majesty of the high sense which, in common with the whole nation, I entertain the magnanimity, wisdom, and benevolence of your majesty. May the Almighty bless your imperial majesty, our great and magnanimous friend, and his constant guidance and protection, George Washington. A key with it, what my brother in Yahuah was trying to tell me was, as recently as 1788 and 1789, here's a letter from George Washington bowing down to the Sultan of Morocco, a black man, a man of color. He was trying to show me that black men were in power as recently as 1788, 1789, because we were talking about the black man was the first man, and basically the stealing of the identity. But here's George Washington coming out of the Revolutionary War and basically bowing down to this Sultan, saying, "Don't invade us. We still, we're just building. We're recouping. We value your friendship, and basically the fact that black men were still in power as recently as 1798, until, of course, the curse continued to evolve. But I wanted to share that with you because it absolutely opened up my eyes to the fact, because here I'm thinking George Washington, I thought he was prim and proper, and he had slaves, but here he is bowing down to Muhammad Abdullah.
Yes.
Okay. Anyways, I wanted to share that with the family, and I love you all, and shalom.
Shalom. Love you too, Aki, and Tuda Rabbah for sharing that. That is great, excellent information, and what you stated there is so absolutely correct. That as recently as the late 1700s, that was, I believe, or 18, that the black men were still in power. The movie Shaka Zulu, not the movie, but the television series Shaka Zulu also brings out that fact. And so it was yes, the curses and deception and a lot of other things that went into play to destroy that power structure through deception, through false promises, through winning over the trust of those people, and then basically stabbing them in the back. You see, and what's interesting also about George Washington is that to the latter end of his life, he actually wrote, and I have a video by this what's a psychologist. What's her name again? Joy McGrew, DeGrew, where she has this letter that was written by George Washington, in which he said that, and I'm going to try to paraphrase what he said, but basically he was concerned, and I'm using his words, that if indeed, in his words, quote unquote, God is just, then we, as a people, speaking about whites, they have a significant price to pay because of the injustice that they have done to so-called black people, and the Indians. He mentioned in this letter. I have the video where she read the actual quote, and others may be familiar with that quote. But that's basically what he said towards the end of his life. And of course, George Washington, it was just a few years ago now, maybe 10, 12 years ago, where it came out that George Washington fathered about 12 children by a slave woman that he was very much secretly in love with. But that's just some of the the hypocrisy that we have seen over throughout the history, this time period. But again, I want to say to the Aki for sharing that. That is very important information, very enlightening information, and very confirming information. You see. Yeah, I am familiar with one. I didn't know that there were as many as 7 or 8. I am familiar with one akut. Didn't know there were 7 or 8, but I am familiar with one. I see. Yes. But again, how would that be, and how could that be? It goes back to what we're talking about, that this whole idea of race is a very recent thing. Race did not play a part in human history, you see, before the 1800s, mid 1800s. Race did not play a part in human history. It was the mid 1800s when they begin to craft this idea of race, and where they begin, and later on, as they develop the idea of race, they begin to call people white and call people black. But race did not play a part nowhere in human history. As Aki Keenan said, if it did, the Romans would have I forget the word that he used, but basically they would have institutionalized it, the Romans. But race did not play a part at all, at all, at all. You see. Yes, indeed. And that's a fact, you see. So now to go back to a question that was raised, who was it that asked? Let me go back to that question because it's an important question that was raised. Let me try to find it. Aki Willie said, Aki, I thought racist is a power structure. Come on. So Aki Willie stated, he was basically asking or stating he thought racist was a power structure. Okay, so here it is, Aki. Now, racism. There's a difference between racism and racist. Okay. Now, racism is a system developed and implemented racist. Okay. Racism is a system developed and implemented by the racist. So racism, that's the system. But before there was a system, you have the racist. Okay? So what is racism? Racism is a system developed to disenfranchise, to oppress, uh, uh, and control someone of another race. A system built out of hatred, so-called race hatred. Now, you can have a racist who do not practice racism because he does not have the means to practice racism, because he has not been able to implement the system. So you can have somebody who hates somebody based on their race, but they do not have the means to implement the system of racism, the system that systematically targets and oppress people of another race. What's amazing to me is that even today in 2016, August 28th, 2016, on the Gregorian calendar, the pagan Gregorian calendar, there are still many people, even right here in America and other places, who do not believe that racism exists. I was watching an interview the other day with a politician, and I don't know if she's really being, I don't think she's being honest. I don't think she can actually be honest, because if she's being honest, she is so ignorant that she should not be in any kind of public office. But this was a senator, a Republican senator from some state, and she was having a conversation on CNN, and they were talking about people being systematically targeted because of their race. And she said that does not exist in America. She was, I mean, she was serious that racism does not exist. That people are just putting these things out there to start stuff, to start race wars and start all kinds of stuff. People are just putting this stuff out there to start stuff. She said it does not exist. And that's amazing to me. That's really amazing to me, because there's so much evidence of its existence that the evidence is overwhelming. So I don't know how it is that you could have somebody that's a senator who don't know of the existence of this system when the entire system of this nation was built upon racism. There's a cop right now in upstate New York. I forget. I think it's Albany or somewhere up there. Albany or wherever the place is that they get a lot of snow up there, going towards Canada. But there's a cop that was fired back in 2004 because she was a black police officer, and they were arresting a black guy, but the white officer just was getting very carried away, wouldn't stop beating the guy, choking him. The guy couldn't breathe properly, so the black officer stepped in and said that you've gone too far. That's brutality, and asking him to stop, and the cop wouldn't stop. He started cursing at her, and she now tried to separate them, and he and the other cops turned around and beat her up and accused her of endangering their lives by interfering with an arrest. She went and she they went and they made a complaint against her, and she went and she made a complaint about what they did. And what do you think the system did? You know what the system did?
They fired her.
They fired her. They fired her. Not only that, by this time, she was a cop already for 19 years. She was already a cop for 19 years, and now she just needed to work 6 more years to get her pension. And after working for 19 years with no charges, no record, no claim, no nothing, no complaints filed against her, after working for 19 years, they fired her and they stripped her of her benefits. They fired her and told her that you get no benefit. You get absolutely no benefits. You do not get your pension. You do not get health insurance. You get no benefits, they told her. 2004, they fired her. And now in 2016, because of all the murders, that's not nothing new. Because of all the murders that police have been committing, that's been getting caught on camera, it's not nothing new. Okay, it's not nothing new. What you see on Facebook and on YouTube and wherever you see it now, it ain't new. And it's not that it's getting worse. It's always been this way. Okay, I've experienced racial profiling. I've experienced 10 cops putting their gun to my head, slamming me against the wall for no reason. I've experienced being pulled over, being told that I have a broken tail light. I've experienced all of that. So I know that it's not made up. Okay? So, and I've experienced more that I could talk about. So this isn't anything new. I have family members that have been beat down by the cops. I have family members that have been hit with a car, with a police car, when there was not needed. You see, it's not anything new. The difference is that it is being caught on cell phone video. That's the only difference. Okay, but they've been getting away with it since the days of slavery. Since the days of slavery, nothing has changed. The whole entire police force was birthed out of slavery. That's where policing was instituted, to round up runaway slaves. Okay? And nothing has changed since. So the only thing different now is the presence of cameras. Is it, how should I put it? Is it so ridiculous to think that is it so ridiculous that a people now seeing their experience being validated by video to be so frustrated they take to the streets? It's really not so ridiculous, but there's a whole lot of people that make it seem ridiculous. But when you have not experienced it, then you can't relate to it. You see, when you've not experienced it, you can't relate to it. You know, and that's the only difference. But when you have experienced it, it does something to you every time you see it. You see, it does something to you every time you see it. All right, what was your question, babe?
Do you think that it is, you know, we say racism, okay? I thought racism was when someone esteems one's race above another, right?
No, that's not racism. That's being a racist.
What is being racist?
Yes.
So what's racism? Because I wasn't in here. I missed that part.
Okay, racism is the system instituted by the racist to oppress a person of another race, the person of the other race that they hate. So they institute a system to keep that person suppressed.
Now, do you think that's based on fear when it comes to, say, like the cops? You know how they approach us so aggressively, and you would think that the way we deal with one another, you know, we would turn on them. Like, I mean, so the way we deal with each other is like, how can one cop beat up three of y'all? You know, if we're that bad, you know, that he would just, is it us or is it the cop? Because I'm confused by the reaction of some people, whereas they would just let two cops hem up 6 of y'all on a fence and nobody turn around and take that gun. You know, so
but we would do it to ourselves, to each other.
We would do it to each other, and I think that's what makes people think that, you know, oh, they did something to, whereas you really did nothing. And
yeah, so yeah, but okay, but what how is that so? Well, if you watch, there's a lot of movies you see how they do it in. But even The Color Purple, right? Even The Color Purple, it showed, well, in that case, she was going to cut the black guy's throat, right, with a razor.
Whoopi was going to
cut his throat, right? In The Color Purple, she was going to cut his throat. But you see in other movies where the slave master, he would beat the slave down and then put a razor in the slave's hand. And the slave would shave him and be careful not even to scratch him just a little bit, right? Because the system of racism that was instituted was a brutal system. It was designed to so psychologically impact the slave. It tells you how they do it, okay? The system is designed to so psychologically impact the slave to fear the master, but yet to hate the one that looks like him. He can act viciously, almost or not almost, but totally inhumanely to the one who looked like him, who is not his oppressor, but he fears the oppressor because of the tactic used. You see, so it becomes an institutionalized fear. There was a video that I was watching on Yahoo News yesterday.
So it's a fear on our part.
Yes.
It's not a fear on their part, because they have had everybody thinking, I don't care what race you are, other than black, to hold your bag.
That's the excuse.
I'm not thinking about your bag.
That's the excuse, but also it's not just the excuse, it's a part of their conditioning also. Because what they've done is they've also conditioned other people or their people to think of us as a threat, even when we're not a threat. To think of us as a threat, because the whole idea is about oppression and purging.
Because a lot of you know, I can say a lot, because when I see a clip on Facebook of somebody of color being beat down, I want to know why they was beat down.
Yeah.
So I'll go and I'll look for, you know, a reason. I may not come across the reason per se, but in the thread you see no mercy at all from nobody.
Yeah, no matter how innocent they are.
And no matter even how innocent the situation, I mean, no matter how undeserving the beating looks, I see absolutely no mercy from nobody Caucasian. Nobody. Okay? So it's almost as if, like the little girl, maybe 2 summers ago, they were at a pool party and they were asked to leave this pool because you know the a kid had I don't know, was out of school because they were getting out of school or because they were, you know, getting ready to go back to school. He had a pool party, and the Caucasian didn't necessarily like the company that this Caucasian kid brought to the pool. Okay,
that was in Chicago, I think.
Sir, handle that little girl,
or Florida.
Handle that little girl like he was crazy. Okay, and he continued to try to attack those of color, like the Caucasian children. I don't mean to keep saying Caucasian, but the white kids were standing around and, like, you know, just like the black kids were standing around. But he continued to pursue them. So people would be in the thread that, like, well, you know, just leave, or, you know, as if they did something. Is that fear? No, I know it's not. Well, I can't say, because I know the way that we are with one another. But then, so when they see things happen between us, they say, oh, well, you know, they're savages. They're getting what they, you know what I mean? It's not, to me, it's not justified to say, okay, this is how they are. But they're my, all right, I think I'm going somewhere else with this right here. I was reading the scripture that says that we will become an astonishment. That's what made me think about why they think the way they think about us. Is that why? Because we have become an astonishment? What type of an astonishment? Because that astonishment is a part of the curse. And the astonishment might not even be so much that that's how we are, but just how we are perceived by them for.
Well, the astonishment, it covers a lot of things. The astonishment, it can be, it comes out of just perception as well as it comes out of reality, right? Because while the scripture said that we would become an astonishment or astonishment, people will be amazed at, for the most part, how you could say how underachieved we are, really not knowing the reason why or not thinking about the reason why.
It doesn't go into what type of astonishment or anything like that. It's just that people
but across the board, in many ways, people would be fearful of us. In some cases for legitimate reasons, in some cases for non-legitimate reasons, right? Because of conditioning. Going all the way back to the days of slavery, whites were taught to think of blacks as animals, and still to this day, a lot of white people think of blacks as animals. Okay, some still think that. Unfortunately, you can run into whites once in a while who think that black people have a tail, and you run into black people who are saying the same thing about white people. Ridiculous. You see what I'm saying? You see people post stuff on Facebook. I see black people post stuff on Facebook, you know, drawing pictures of whites with tails, and you see white people making the same stuff. It's ridiculous. Both are racist, you see, and there is no place, really no place for that. But as far as us being an astonishment,
he says an astonishment in a byword.
Yes,
and
yes,
and that. So
yes.
It's in a negative light.
Right,
not
right,
in a, oh,
right.
Astonishment is a great ball player.
Right. No. Yes. So, but the means, you see, when Yahuah talk about things happening, a lot of times people think that, oh, it's just going to fall out of the sky and just happen. No, there is a means by which it happens. And just like Yahuah uses people to reach people in the awakening, Yahuah uses Shaitan, which is also the scriptures describe kings, systems as Shaitan. That's something that people don't like to face up to, but it's a fact. Yahuah uses the system, Shaitan, to bring about what he has said would come about concerning his people. When he talk about earthquakes, this and that and the other, people bring some of that about. All of it don't just happen, you see? So we don't often think about how things would come to pass, you see? But Yahuah said it would be, and now there is a method through which it comes. Racism, the system of racism brings that out. Again, the Willie Lynch letter really tells you how it is that we would do so much harm to ourselves, but yet not do the same to people who are literally hurting us, you see. Willie Lynch letter tells us that. Now, Aki Keenan, I see your flag, Aki. Go ahead, Aki.
Yes, Mishpaka, you know, things about the whole astonishment time. Now, I mean, like I said, I wrote down there that we have been astonishment to all peoples of this world.
Yes.
As the scriptures, as Yahuah said that we would be.
Indeed.
And at one time they call us monkeys and all like this and that. Mm-hmm. So I'm in Japan. Me and a friend of mine, we in Japan. Mm-hmm. So this is when we was of the world. Mm-hmm. And he went and got him a little Japanese girlfriend. Mm-hmm. He was with her, and he sleep. And he said he just felt like somebody was watching him. He, just hovering over and watching him.
Yeah.
And so he said he jumped up out of the bed, and the Japanese girl was looking at him. Mm-hmm. He was laying on his stomach, and she was looking at him. And he said, "What are you doing? What are you looking at?" She said, I'm waiting for 12 o'clock to wait to see if waiting for your tail to grow.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I'm because you remember, then that's the kind of stuff they used to say that yes. we grow tails yes. and all that, but we got tails and all this kind of madness and stuff. Mm-hmm. But that's the kind of madness, delusional thinking that has been, it's not even a physical thing. It's in the
psyche,
it's in the atmosphere, it's
yes.
in that spiritual aspect.
Yes,
and because it's against us. It's against us as a people.
Yes.
That Yahuah said that this was what's going to happen to us if we fall off and not be abide to His word.
Yes.
The be Baruch. Yes. We get the curses.
Yes.
So, and I mean, I can tell a whole bunch of stories about being out in the Far East in the South Pacific and coming across being mistreated as far as the propaganda of racism towards us people of color out there. So just want to put that out.
Yes, indeed, Aki. And the fact of the matter is, the darker you are, the more real it becomes, because the darker you are, the more targeted you are, and that's just the way it is. That's just the way it has been, because the doctrine is, the teaching has been that you are less evolved. You're closer. The darker you are, the closer you are to being still in the state of a monkey. So that has affected the children of those who propagate that, and not only has it affected the children of those who propagate that, it has also affected us. So among us, it has created dysfunction, because even within families, historically, the lighter skinned people in families are more embraced than the darker ones in the family. And then what that creates dysfunction in the family. Now you have the dark skinned people not liking the light skinned people in the family. That's where the paper bag test comes from. You see, you got to pass the paper bag test, and so it's seeds that have been sown to keep us separated, hateful, and dysfunctional.
One more quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Were we? When did it be? When were we? I don't want to say that. When did they first start referring to Black people as African Americans?
When did they first start referring to Black people as African Americans? That started
prior to that. We were not. Well, I read in the book where it said they did not refer to us as African, period, because they did not want us to know that we come from a great civilization. So it made me wonder, well, they didn't always call us African Americans. So I just wanted to know,
it's
when
recent.
did they begin to refer to us as African Americans?
Yeah. Aki Keenan said it was in the 90s, and yeah, and that might, and Aki Keenan, he said it was the 90s. I don't remember what exact time, but Aki Keenan said it was in the 90s, but it's very, very recent.
So no wonder we all messed up, because
Yes.
prior to that, you were known as what?
Yes. Before, yeah. Well, prior to that, they'd call you black. Okay. As a matter of fact, they would call you colored. They start out with colored. Okay. Well, now let's go back. It was the N word all the way across the board. Okay?
N word all the way across the board.
Yes. N word. Yes. N word all the way across the board. Okay. Then after that, they went to colored. Okay. Then after that, they went to black. Then after that, they went to Negroes. Now, keep in mind that colored.
Negroes and nigger and nigger.
Yeah. But no. Negroes still wasn't intended to be a compliment. No, today we say Negro as if it's complimentary, but it wasn't even intended to be a compliment. It's just a softening of the rhetoric, but it wasn't intended to be a compliment. So watch the progression. So earlier on, it was the N word across the board. Okay. To anybody you see, even to the white person who weren't so as hateful as the hateful white person, as they would say. Because, okay, let me put it this way. People in the North never saw themselves as racist and hateful. But they saw people in the South as being racist and hateful. Okay? So white folks in the North didn't see themselves as racist and hateful, but they saw people in the South as being racist and hateful, right? But the reality is it true that they weren't racist and hateful? The truth is no, it's not true. They were just as much racist and hateful as the people in the South. Now, while in the North, they didn't see themselves as racist and hateful like the people in the South. And the people in the South, watch this, the people in the South saw them as, they called them N lovers, even though literally they weren't N lovers, because the North was a very racist place. Okay, the North, even though they were more accommodating of black people, they were still racist. So even when they saw themselves as being accommodating of black people, and if you ask them, they would praise themselves about caring for black people, they still refer to the black person earlier on as an N. Okay, so it was N across the board. Okay, it was the N word across the board, or boy, okay, or girl, little girl, no matter how old you are, girl. Okay, yes, yeah, all those, yes, but for the most part,
prior to now, that was just the byword.
Yeah, yes, the bywords, and throughout the years, they've all been bywords. So it's been the N word across the board. But then after the N word, they come up with colored. Okay, well, actually, after the N word, black came. And if you look up the definition of black, you'll see why they name you black and why they took the title white. And then colored. Okay, colored was supposed to be progress. Okay, but it really wasn't. Just like Donald Trump having his people write, when a black person applied for an apartment, writing colored on C for colored on their thing. It wasn't a compliment. No.
I said no right now.
No. Okay, so so N word black, then it went to colored, and it went to Negro, and it just recently came up to African American. Okay, and African American came out of what they call Pan-Africanism, or a push among blacks to be identified by their continent of origin, but still by some blacks to be identified by their continent of origin. But black people still weren't, so-called black people now, they still weren't united in that, because they felt like that still didn't tell our, some felt like that still didn't tell our story. You see, which it doesn't. So but that's been the progress, or lack of progress, perhaps, through the years. Okay, there was another question on the board. Aki Keenan, did you have something else to add, Aki?
No, Key. That was it. It just that as you was going, progressing through, the N-word, Negro, colored, Afro-American, black, and I mean, it's they all bywords. They all by. It doesn't identify us as a nation of people, and it's so sad that, and we just gravitate, we just claim that stuff like it belongs to us.
Yes.
Foolishness is just mind-boggling, man. I can't say I don't understand. I do understand.
Yes.
But it's I guess it's just it is what Yahuah says it's going to be. It's just a remnant. But we don't know what that count is. Only He does. So we just continue to sow our seeds and pray, and let Yahuah do what He going to do.
Indeed. Now, this is, again, I want to emphasize why we're having this discussion. I was getting ready to get back into the book, and it's going to talk about quote unquote racism against the Jews. Now we're talking about the Jews. We're getting ready to talk about the Jews now. It's going to talk about racism against the Jews. But again, I started to talk about this whole issue of race because it's important for us to understand. Because again, remember last week we read from this book, and in this book, it states that the Europeans and the Romans, that they were ignorant people, that they were ignorant, couldn't read, couldn't communicate properly. And it was the so-called Jews who taught them how to read and do all these things. The problem...
I have a question for that. Did they not know how to read specific languages? Because they say that about us.
Yes.
We didn't know how to read American language or English language or write English language.
No. They couldn't read. The majority of them couldn't read or write their own language.
So
when they had the council,
yes,
when they had the Council of Nicaea, because it was classism, and you're about to see that.
Okay, gotcha.
You're about to see that in this book as we read. Okay. It was classism. So the richer, much richer folks would be more educated, but then the poorer you get, the less educated you are, and that's the system that brought down Rome. Okay, because of elitism. Elitism is what brought down Rome. Okay, but even people in high places were not educated. Now, in the book, they said that the Jews taught them to read and write and taught them to build and do different things. But the truth of the matter is, it wasn't the Jews. It was people of Yasharal. History have told us that for generations. It was people of Yasharal who did that, who educated them. Okay? There's a story told about World War I. World War One in England, they were having a lot of casualties. A lot of the soldiers were dying, from their injuries, or so they thought it was from their injuries. And what happened? This nurse, she was a Christian. Um, I don't know if she was white or black. Probably she was white. I don't know. I don't know.
Take it out your mouth.
But she is arena. She is very much celebrated. Don't remember her name right now. But one night she was reading, as the story goes, she was reading in the book of Bamadabar, I believe, or Leviticus, one of them. Numbers or Leviticus. The washing of hands, cleansing. And then it dawned on her why they were having so many of the injured soldiers were dying and injured people were dying. She realized that what they were doing from reading this text, she realized that it was because the nurses and the doctors, they would leave from one injured person, from treating their wound, and going over to the next person with blood on their hands, dirty hands and everything, and touching their wounds, and just keep going from person to person, cross-contaminating. And if one person was infected, before you know it, that infection was spreading to everybody. And so the death rate was alarming. And so it wasn't until she read in the scriptures about the importance of cleansing, washing of hands, just washing hands, that they realize it is to wash your hands. Okay, now this is told. This is in medical journal. I've read it in an article concerning her. But that brought down the death rate tremendously just from washing hands. You see what I'm saying? Now you would think that. Now this is England in 1901, whenever that was. Okay, World War One. And you would think that around that time, people would know how important it is to wash their hand. But obviously, they didn't, right? Here's another fact. And people have said this. I see it, people say it, post it on social media. And people say it's racist, but you know what? It's actually the truth. I saw a documentary on PBS talking about it, about personal hygiene in early Europe.
Oh yeah, I remember. Ooh, yeah.
And in the documentary, they were saying that people didn't take showers very often. Now, as it goes, as history tells it, it was the Moors, which was just another name for anybody that's black, who taught the Europeans the importance of taking showers because they didn't take showers. That's what is said historically, you know. So when we talk about ignorance, a lot of times what's written in history is rewritten and misrepresented, and the facts are hidden. But the problem is, it all depends on who says it. You see, it all depends on who says it. You listen. They were living in a different kind of environment. You know, it was cold, it was dark, and I don't know how many people, you know, when you're living in the cold all day long, that you want to jump out there and and go wash. You know, so you know you can understand perhaps how it came to be that way. In this documentary that I was watching on PBS, what they did was, in order to wash clothes, and they would have to, eventually they came up with a system of where they would boil the water. They would boil the clothes to wash the clothes, you know. And they were showing in there how for the majority of people, they might have one outfit
Yeah.
that last them forever, you know, because the truth of the matter is earlier on, and that's why people branched out, began to look for new territory.
And the money to actually make the soaps.
Yeah, they began to look for the new territory because the place was very impoverished and overpopulated, and so that's why they continued to look for more territory. They launched out into Africa, America, and other places, you know. But that stuff is historical, but depending on who says it, it can be deemed as racist, but it's a factual thing. Okay, now the question was asked. um, uh, there's a question that was on the board earlier. I gotta find it. It was a while ago. I'm sorry. All right, it was from a key. Was from a key Terry. By the way, it's great to see you, Aki. Shalom to you. He says, I am curious, what is your origin and defining moment for teaching the word according to your understanding? Keep in mind that this scripture, Revelation 22:18 through 19, is my personal yardstick. Okay, Revelation 22:18 through 19. Is that talking about the dogs on the outside, Aki? Um, is that that it? No. Okay, let me go back. Let me try and remember. Or it's talking about the commands, and give me a second. Let me pull that up. I don't remember 18 through 19. Give me just a second. Let me pull up the scriptures. We talk about coldness in Europe, and the fact is that the earth was colder earlier on and has been steadily and gradually warming. And it's not the first time that it has warmed. Um, okay. For I witness to everyone hearing the words of the prophecy of this book. If anyone adds to them, Elohim shall add to him the plagues that are written in this book. And if anyone takes away from the words of the book of this prophecy, Elohim shall take away his part from the book of life and out of the set apart city book. Now I'm going to back up a little bit, Aki, to where I was making reference to. Beginning at verse 14, it says, Baruch are those doing his commands, so that the authority shall be theirs unto the tree of life, and to enter through the gates into the city. But outside are the dogs, and those who enchant with drugs, and those who whore, and the murderers, and the idolaters, and all who love and do falsehood. I, Yahusha, have sent my messenger to witness to you these matters in the assemblies. I am the root and the offspring of Dahoud, the bright and morning star. And the spirit and the bride say, Come, and he who hears, let him say, Come, and he who thirsts, come, and he who desires it, take the water of life without paying. And then he goes on to warn about adding and taking away from this book, because those who add, he will add to them the plague. Those who take away will remove their name. And that's just echoing what Yahuah continued to say time and time again. For example, going back to the book of Dabarim, chapter 4, chapter 12, and so many other places where he has said this. And so your question is a key. Let me back up and find the question again. I am absolutely with you, Aki, concerning. I'm very mindful of that. And that's why I believe in taking my time to let context speak. You see, when I was in church, what I experienced in church and the way that I was taught in church was to, when you want to talk about something, you find a verse and in order to, and let it be the springboard for what you want to talk about. That's really what happens in church, right? The pastor want to talk about something, so what he does, he goes and he finds a verse or two, and then that verse or two becomes the springboard that launches him into what he want to talk about. So in church, sermons, I don't believe in sermons. I don't preach sermons. But sermons, if you listen to church sermons, they're not about the context, the text, the scriptures. Sermons are built upon one or two verses, and then once they read those two verses, then they hoop and holler for the rest of the time, or talk about whatever they want to talk about for the rest of the time. It's really not about the scriptures. It's about being a hype man, or whatever. And that's where we get into trouble, because we're not allowing the scriptures to speak for themselves, and that's where the word becomes twisted and misrepresented. But when we realize the warning that Yahuah gives concerning the handling of his word, making sure that we do not add to it nor take away from it, then it should force us then to be careful to make sure that what we are representing and what we are presenting is what's written. So if you come to this fellowship and you sit for any amount of time, you will find that the most of what you hear is not what I'm saying, but it's what's being read from the scriptures, because I don't have a whole lot of words of myself, you see. And so we spend a whole lot of time reading from the text and keeping it in context, because again, I am very aware of how seriously Yahuah takes the handling of his word. So you ask, Aki, what is my origin and defining moment for teaching the word according to your understanding? As I try to answer that, I want to understand a little bit more when you say origin. What is, if you could just clarify for me, when you say what is your origin, you speak of my nationality, or how this, how my search for truth began. I just need to understand. I want some clarity, because I don't want to answer the question out of line of what you're actually asking me, So, okay, my awakening. Okay. All right. So here it is. So I was in church. Let me give you a quick synopsis. I was in church, and I was in the church for over 10 years. And I was very active in the church. I was studying to be a pastor. I was 3 courses away from becoming a pastor. And I was an assistant to the pastor. I was in charge of street ministry, and just really very active in the church. I was on the board of elders, the board of whatever, whatever board there be, I was on. So I was very active. 5 years, I was riding to work one morning, and there was a Catholic priest on another Christian on a Protestant radio station. He was on a syndicated Protestant program, and he was talking to the host of that program, a Christian, about the influence that Catholicism has over Protestantism. And he was explaining to the host that the only reason why the other churches celebrate Christmas is because the Catholic Church made it a decree for them to do so. The only reason why the other churches celebrate Easter was because the Catholic Church made it a decree. And he went down the list of holidays, right? And he talked about the doctrines of the church, and a lot of it is influenced by the Catholic Church. Now, my time in church, up to that point, 5 years in church, in the church where I was and in other churches, the only thing I would listen to all day long at work and at home and everywhere else was Christian radio. And I'd listen to all of the pastors, and I knew all of them by name and whatever. And so I just consumed their doctrines for all that time. And what I would hear from a lot of them was that the Catholic Church was no good. And so based on hearing that, and then hearing this Catholic priest saying this stuff about the origin of a lot of Christian doctrines and the holidays and stuff like that, as I was listening to him riding to work, the more I listened, the angrier I got, because I thought to myself that he was lying. And how is it that this guy, the host, more to stop him? And so what I did was I decided at that moment to do some research to prove him wrong, to myself, and also to after I've proven him wrong to myself, to go back and share it with the church, with the rest of the church, that this Catholic priest was telling on the radio. So as I began to do the research, I was shocked, because the more I realized that what he was saying was actually true. And so my research, I still stayed in the church for another 5 or 6 years after that point. I still stayed in the church, all the while researching. Okay. And so the more I research and I'm in the church, toward the latter end, Shadi, go in there, please. Toward the latter end, it became uneasy for me. It became uneasy. It became uneasy for me to just sit there and not. Give me just a second, please, family. Hey, Ben, let him come in there for me. He's being really distracted. Okay. Okay. So it became really uneasy for me to just sit there, and I was responsible. I was in the lineup to preach what they call a tithing message, which is basically to hype people up, to get them to give their money every Sunday. And Yahuah, at the time, I didn't know him to be Yahuah. I didn't know his name, but he was working in me before I knew him. He was drawing me before I knew him, and began to realize that what we're teaching about tithing was false, and so on and so forth. And when my turn came around, I began to proclaim what should be. And then the pastor began to come and stand and look, stand there and watch as I am preaching the tithing message. So, because to give me signals of when to cut it off or whatever. So it was becoming more and more uneasy. So I stopped tithing. And then they had a meeting among the leaders, and they say, was talking to me and to my wife, if you're not going to tithe, you can't be in leadership, this, that, and the other. And then I had it came a point where I said, I have to talk with them. So I requested a meeting with them to have a conversation. So him and his wife, they said we could have the conversation right now. I went to them one Sunday after service and I asked, if we could sit down and just discuss some things that I'm finding as I'm studying. And they said, well, we could talk about whatever it is right now. They were very abrasive. And so because they saw that something was changing. And so we stood in the middle of the church having this conversation, and they tell me, all right, now I took them to the scriptures, and they said, all right, now hold on, now we got to put a word against the word, is what they said to me. So they went and they got their Bible and to put a word against the word, whatever that means. So what I was showing them from the scriptures, they were basically saying that's not right. You got to put a word against the word. So they came and twisted up some scriptures and telling me this is that, and the other. After that, they began for example, my keys went missing because I had the keys to the church. I'd set up. I was in charge of the sound equipment and stuff like that. And so my keys went missing, and then they began to preach at me from the pulpit and stuff like that. My role began to diminish. And one Sunday, it got so bad, him preaching at me from the pulpit, that I got up and walked out and went and sat in the car till the service was over, and then went back in and told my wife and the kids it was time to go. And so I left and never went back. But when I left there, I thought that, that I was just being called to go to another church. So I tried going to another church and realized that it wasn't the same mess. But prior to this, and in the process of me searching, Yahuah spoke something in my Ruach. And I don't say a whole lot of times what Yahuah has spoken to me in church, because Yahuah wasn't speaking to me in church other than when he began to draw me. I don't give Yahuah credit for anything that I say, anything that I preached in church, because it was all contrary to the word of Yahuah. You see, because that was paganism. It wasn't truth. But I remember being in church, and this word came to my Ruach. I am raising up people of no name to proclaim my truth. I am raising up people of no name to proclaim my truth. I remember something to that extent. Fully understand it then. So I came out of the church, and then I began to just fellowship at home, and then some other folks came out of the church after me, and they began to fellowship with me at home. And then that turned into they came out of the church, but the church was very much with them, and they were still very Christian, and so they wanted to argue about everything, and that didn't want to really search out anything, and so that didn't go over too well. And so then I spent a lot of my time now just sharing the things that Yahuah was laying on my Ruach. I didn't have a Facebook account until I just have this overwhelming need to share the word of Yahuah, what Yahuah was it put in me a desire to search out his name. I didn't start out knowing his name to be Yahuah. I started out at Yahweh, and then and whatever else along the way. But in the process, he taught me. And so but I began to share on Facebook. I created a Facebook account, not to talk about what I'm eating, not to talk about where I've been, not to talk about anything else, but to share the word of Yahuah. That's the only reason why I opened a Facebook account, because Yahuah impressed it upon me to do so. So I opened the account, and that's all I did was just share the scriptures. And I was laid off for a time, and I spent every day searching the scriptures and sharing. And so as I began to share, several people would send me messages, inbox me, or ask for my phone number, and they would call and we would talk, and they would say, Aki, you ever think about starting a fellowship? Because I believe that Yahuah really is using you to reach his people. And I brushed it off the first few times that came along, and it came about again, and so I decided to open a room on Pal Talk, and so I opened up a room on Pal Talk, and of all the people that were there when I first started that room on Pal Talk, none of them are here now. Some of them they've turned to all kinds of other stuff. One person become a Muslim since then. But then after them, we have there soon after Akut Gina came, started coming to the room on Pal Talk, and Akut Gina is, of all the people here now, Akut Gina has been a part of the fellowship for the longest. She started attending the fellowship in the first year after I opened the room on Pal Talk. About a year and a half later, Akut Al Yashaba, I met Akut Al Yashaba. And I remember Akut Al Yashaba. I didn't, and it didn't dawn on me until sometime later that this was the Akut that I had a phone conversation with. Um, at one point, she had called me, and we had a conversation about the scriptures. And she was coming to the room, but I didn't realize that that was the person I had the phone conversation with. It was took a little while for me to catch up and realize that that's who I was talking to on the phone, So, but Akut Al Yashaba have been here after Akut Gina, Akut Al Yashaba, and many people have come and gone. Akut Sharia and Akut Yariya. They came some, I'm not sure how long after Akut Al Yashaba. So those are the four people that have been a part of this fellowship the longest. And again, a lot of people have come and gone. And what I've learned, though, is that what Yahuah showed me and taught me is that, and earlier on, again, coming out of Christianity and having studied for 9 years to be a pastor, and it took 9 years because I wasn't doing it consistently, and I was in the final year when I gave it up. But having studied for 9 years to be a pastor, I thought that I knew that's what Christianity have you feeling. I thought that I knew everything there was to know, and so when I spoke quite confidently. And Yahuah had to show me that no, you need to think twice and speak once, and so there earlier on there have been times when I've had to come back to this room and say, you know what, family, I apologize and I have to repent before Yahuah because I stated something that is not according to the scriptures. And then through that process, Yahuah showed me that we do not arrive at the truth, but in this awakening, we grow in the truth. We don't arrive at the truth, we grow in it, you see. And through that, I've learned to listen more, search more, and only speak after I have really truly searched and examined, because it's not a light thing to misrepresent the word of Yahuah. It's not a light thing, because when you misrepresent, you're either adding or you're taking away from his word. And he says that to those who add to his word, he will add to them the plagues of the book. And to those who take away from his word, he will remove their name from the book. And so it's a serious thing. And so that's why when I go through the scriptures, even if I've studied it over and over and I know what it say, I don't come in and just give you a narration and then make a point. I say, okay, family, let's go here and let's walk through this. Because by the time we walk through it, the text itself should convey what is being said. You see? And so I'll let the scripture speak for itself. I don't want nobody should really have a legitimate argument in saying that you made that up. Oh, people are going to say that, you see, because some people, again, some people might not might be where I was ago, and then coming out of Christianity, I thought that I had it all figured out, and they don't realize that you don't arrive at the truth yet; you grow in it. And so some people feel like they have it figured out, you know, even being new to the truth. Some people, it's just the way it is. It's because of how we have been conditioned. They think they have it figured out, and so they might speak prematurely, and then Yahuah has to come along and correct them. I learned that, and so I've learned to take my time and to diligently search out the word and to make sure that I'm representing it contextually and not simply using it as a springboard to communicate what I want to communicate. So that's basically my experience, Aki. That's basically my experience, Aki Terry. Okay, so Strong's Concordance, along with the major religious sect, were created by white males, and this book is allegedly credible. Allegedly credible. That was a question. Hold on. Strong's Concordance, along with the major religious sect, were created by white males, and this book is allegedly credible. If it is believed that the white man tampered with the Bible, how then can a book by a white man be credible, basically, right? How then can a book by a white man, let me see, supersede the words of the Bible? Oh, how then can a book by a white man supersede the words of the Bible? Okay, that's a great question, but a question also with some misunderstanding in it. Because here's the reason why I say that, Aki. Strong's Concordance, I'm writing Strong's Concordance, was developed by Mr. Strong's, and that's correct, Mr. Strong's, a white man, that's correct, Mr. Strong's. But the Bible is also a white man's book. The Bible is also a white man's book. So your question was, how can Strong's Concordance supersede the Bible when Strong's Concordance is a white man's book? The fact of the matter is that both of them are white men books. So at the end of the day, I don't just take the word of Mr. Strong's for it, and I don't take the translation, the corrupt translation we know as the Bible. I don't just simply take that as final. What to do is we have to dig. The Bible, when we begin to dig, what we learn is we learn that the Bible was named by Europeans after a pagan sun deity called Byblos. Now we're told that Byblos is Greek for book. We're told that Byblos is Greek for book. And the fact of the matter is, that's not how the book got the name, simply book. It got its name from Biblos, the sun deity. And the reason why, in particular, too, one of the reasons why, so Christianity, all of Christianity is about sun worship. All of Christianity is about sun worship. That's what Christianity is all about. It's just that Christians don't realize it. Many Christians don't realize it, but that's what Christianity is. It is sun worship. Okay. Now, Biblos, one of the reasons why they decided to name the book Biblos, other than the fact that it gives esteem to the sun, but the other reason why is because the papyrus that they first started writing, translating on, or mistranslating on, would come through the port city of Byblos, a city in ancient Phoenicia named after that sun deity. So the papyrus would come from Egypt by ship, and it would come and it would be offloaded at the port city, Byblos, and then it would be distributed through the regions of Europe, Rome, and England and other places. And so they named the book after the book that was written on this papyrus. They named it after this city, which is named after the sun deity, knowing fully well who Byblos is. Again, because Christianity, which the Bible is a Christian book, Christianity is all about sun worship. So both of these books are key. Both the Strong's Concordance, both the Strong's Concordance and the Bible are, as you say, written by the white man. Both of them are, you see. So the bottom line is, I don't take Mr. Strong's word as final. I dig deeper. And I don't take the Bible's word as final. I dig deeper. So your question, to your question, I guess that's my response. I don't take neither one as being final, because the Bible is not it. Yahuah never named the Bible. Named his scriptures the Bible. 2 Peter 1:20-21. Okay, Aki, let me take a look at it. And again, I like to add context to the text, so it may be necessary, but I think I know which text you're referring to. All scriptures. Wait, let me go to it. 2 Kapha. Inspired, or 2 Kapha. What was it? Chapter 119. Let me look at it again. I forget what you had written. Bear with me just for a second. Yeah, 1:20-21. Bear with me here. Okay, 2 Kapha, 2 Peter chapter 1, 20-21. All right. Knowing this first, that no prophecy of Scripture came to be of one's own interpretation. For prophecy never came by the desire of man, but men of Elohim spoke, being moved by the set-apart Spirit. Okay. Yep, and that's absolutely right. Knowing this first, that no prophecy of Scripture came to be of one's own interpretation. That's right. So we have to, what does this mean? What it means is that going all the way back to when Yahuah gave the scriptures through his prophets, right? And the scriptures are prophecies, right? What is prophecy? It's not what Juanita Bynum does. It's not what any so-called Christian prophet does. Prophecy is the word of Yahuah. Prophecy is the bar of Yahuah. And so anybody who claimed to speak the word of Yahuah is a prophet, is seen as a prophet. Okay? The mouthpiece of Yahuah, one speaking the word of Yahuah. Okay? And so now none of it came. So no scripture came through any private interpretation or from the heart of any individual, but it came from Yahuah. Okay, now for example, we're in the book of Peter here. Peter and all of the what they call the New Testament, except for the book of Yahu Katsun, the rest of the books of the so-called New Testament, they're not scriptures. They're letters. They were never intended to be scriptures, but they're actually letters written by the taught ones of Yahuah, Yahusha. And they were writing, making reference to the scriptures. Okay, so these are letters that make reference to the scriptures. The scriptures were given to the prophets. So when you read, and unfortunately, when we talk about the New Testament, and when we talk about the New Testament from the perspective of translation, the majority of what we see in translation, especially when it comes to the New Testament, have been severely and significantly tampered with. They have added stuff to it. They have taken away from it, you see. And they even tell us that they do it, you see. But so the scriptures was not given by any private interpretation and cannot be proclaimed through any private interpretation. So the scriptures must explain itself. The scriptures must give an explanation for itself, you see. If we want to use the word interpret itself, which the scriptures really need no interpretation. It's not like, you know, it's in one language and then it's got to transform itself into another language. No, it was written in one language to a people who speak the language. And even when it was translated to Greek, it was translated to Greek for the same people who were now living in the Isles of Greece, speaking the Greek language. And so it's not a matter of really even interpretation. It's just a matter of gaining understanding, you know. So it says, for prophecy never came by the desire of man, but men of Elohim spoke, being moved by the set-apart spirit. And that's exactly right. So when those who have recorded the words of Yahuah, when they record it, when they write it, they didn't just come up. What this is saying is that they didn't just have an idea, let me write a book, and they got up to write a book. No, Yahuah commanded them to write, and they write, you know. So that's the way I see that text, Taki. Yeshayahu chapter 30, verse 8 through 10. Isaiah chapter 30, verse 8 through 10. and go write it before them on a tablet, and inscribe it on a scroll, that it is for a letter for a latter day, a witness forever, that this is a rebellious people, lying children, children who refuse to hear the Torah of Yahuah. Now, as we look, okay, this is a rebellious people, lying children, children who refuse to hear the Torah of Yahuah, who say to the seers, do not see, and to the prophets, do not prophesy to us what is right. Speak to us what is smooth. Prophesy deceits. Yes? So this is talking about Yasharal in their rebellion, right? This is talking about Yasharal in their rebellion, and Yahuah is making his case against this rebellious nation. All of Scripture, Christianity have taught us that the Scriptures were written to individuals from everywhere, right? Christianity teaches us that anybody from any place, from any nation, can just pick up this book and put themselves right in it, that Yahuah was talking to them. No matter what nation they're from, Yahuah was talking directly to them. Okay? Now, Christianity, of course, don't give esteem to Yahuah. They don't say Yahuah, but so I'm not even going to say Christianity say Yahuah was talking to them. They've replaced the name of Yahuah for Baal, which is God, is the name of a pagan deity. And so they've replaced the name of Yahuah for Baal, as the scriptures tells us in Yahu chapter 23, verse 25 through 27 and other places. Christianity will give you this idea, and Judaism, even some aspect of Judaism, not all aspect of Judaism, for the most part, Judaism says that the scriptures was given to the Jews, okay, and to the Jews only. Now, you know, some other people can come in, okay, but for the most part, Christianity have conditioned people to think that anybody can pick up this book and it's talking just in general to everybody in the world. So they say John 3:16, Yahukanan 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that all who believe on him may be saved and have everlasting life. Now, all of that is gibberish. All of that is garbage. All of that is nonsense. It's not according to truth. It's not according to the scriptures, because the scriptures does not say that. Okay? So first we have to understand that the scriptures that were given was given to a nation. The scriptures was given to one nation. We go to Tehillim, Psalms 147, the last verse, Yahuah says, and not just there, but in other places, Yahuah says, I have not given my Torah to any other nation, to any other people. Okay? He has only given his instruction to one nation, and that's the nation of Yasharal. Now, it does not mean that others who hear his instructions and have made the decision to obey, that they will not, that there is no place for them. Because Yahuah says that I've given one Torah, both to the homeborn and to the stranger who will obey. So Yahuah have always made place for the believing stranger who will neglect their pagan ways and turn to the Torah of Yahuah. Now, so we keep that in mind as we look at this text. So this is not a message to the world, as they say, but this is Yahuah stating his grievance against a rebellious nation, a disobedient nation. And so he's talking to Yasharal about their disobedience. He's talking to his people about them turning away from his instruction. And he is telling them here in this chapter about the impending judgment that's going to come upon them as a result of disobedience. And is laying out the charges against them. And one of the big problems that he had was, you know, a lot of times people blame the false teachers. They blame the pastors a lot of times. A lot of times we might blame the pastors. But you know what the truth is? The blame begin with the people in the pews, not with the pastors. Because the pastors, they're harlots. They're whores. And what do whores do? What do harlots do? They cater to their customers, right? They cater to their customers. So let's look at that text again. And that's exactly what Yahuah is saying. Okay? It didn't start with the pastors. It didn't start with the shepherds, not pastors. It didn't start with the shepherds. It did not lay the blame first on the shepherds, but they're going to be judged even greater. Okay? He started with the people in the assembly, not with the teacher. He started with the people because the people are directing, they're sending signals to the shepherd about what they want to hear. And the false shepherd in turn is telling them what they want to hear to keep them happy. Okay? So look at it. Let's look at it here. So, and go, write it before them on a tablet and inscribe it on a scroll, that it is for a latter day a witness forever, that this is a rebellious people, lying children, children who refuse to hear the Torah of Yahuah, who say to the seers, the shepherds, their leaders, their guides, do not see. They say to the shepherds, do not see. And to the prophets, do not prophesy to us what is right. Speak to us what is smooth. Prophesy deceit. Lie to me. All I want you to do is lie to me. Turn aside from the way, swerve from the path, cause the set apart one of Yasharal to cease from before us. So you see, it started with the people. They want their ears tickled. You see, they want their ears tickled. So what did they do? They go out and they hire them a prostitute. They hire them a pimp. He's both a prostitute and a pimp. And he comes in and he prostitutes the world. He pimps the people. He give them what they want to hear, you see, and they're happy with that. And when the true prophet comes proclaiming what is right, what do they do to him? They ridicule him, they stone him, they mock him, they put him in prison, they put him in a cesspool. All these things they do. But the problem didn't begin with the false prophet. It began with the people who have rejected Yahuah. So that's what I see in that text, Aki. Have to get ready to close out soon. We never got to the book this evening, but I wanted to get this issue about race and racism out of the way before we go further in the book. And I'm looking forward to the next time we come together to continuing to read this book. I think that we all enjoyed going through this information the last time we were in the book. No problem, Aki. No apologies necessary. That's what this is all about. It's all about searching, digging, right? And reasoning from the scriptures. That's what this is all about. No apologies necessary. It's not your fault why I never got to the book. I started off outside of the book earlier. Flag? Oh, I didn't see the flag, but please go ahead, Akut Vernice. Please go ahead. And while, Aki Rob, please go ahead, Aki. Indeed. Can you hear me, Aki Rob? Let's see. Oh, no flag. Okay. It must be from earlier. Akut Vernice saw from earlier. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead, Akut.
Shalom Mashpaka. I guess Robert, he does want to say something.
Okay. Okay.
Key, as always, extremely informative, and I can't overemphasize my gratitude for the lesson. But one thing that I did want to say was you may have been talking about Florence Nightingale.
Yes.
Earlier.
Yes.
Because I know my wife did a study on her.
Yes.
And she was definitely involved with infections and the cleansing of the hands.
Yes.
But also, one other thing I wanted to point out, Key, is from that our origin. My father's parents came from Italy,
Mm-hmm.
and my mother's great grandparents came from Ireland.
Yes.
So I consider myself Italian American and Irish American.
Gotcha.
However, all my black friends at work, when they refer to themselves as African American, I said, if you guys knew your real roots, you'd call yourselves Hebrew American. What do you think about that, Keith?
Akia, you brought up a point there that your point there is deep, and it goes probably beyond well, I think you're very aware of the point, because you made the point, and your point is so profound. You because you mentioned your ancestry. And so you refer to yourself as Italian American. That tells of your ancestry, ties you to your mom, and of Irish American ties you to your dad and is Irish root. Both of these are countries, Ireland and Italy. When somebody say African American, it ties them to no place. It ties them to a big old continent. And if you go to the continent of Africa and say, I'm from Africa, then the people in whatever place you land saying, I'm from Africa, and I've come home, they're going to say, well, where in Africa are you from? You realize Africa is not a country, it's a continent, right? And so they're going to say to you, that tells me nothing of your origin. That tells me nothing of your ancestry. Therefore, we need more than that before we can let you into our borders. And so it is a disservice for us to refer now I was born in Jamaica, right? Now, and people call me Jamaican, but that's another byword, you see. And we talk about earlier what they call people in Jamaica. The slave owners didn't call the people Jamaican, you see. They used the N word and boy and so on. So to your point, Aki, but when you tell them, for the sake of the fact that we have to speak to people sometimes in a way that they can understand us, and so it's totally fine and reasonable to say to somebody, if you research your roots, you will find that you are Hebrew American. So even though we know that Hebrew isn't the correct terminology, when we study, we know that it's not Hebrew, that is something recently created by Ashkenaz. We know that it's Abari, and so it helps sometimes to get people to relate when you say, you're Hebrew. That helps, but also as we say that to them, in the process, explain to them too, it might trigger some people to want to dig. You say Abari, I've never heard of that. And so Hebrew, or more correctly, you are Abari or Abarim, but now there's another side to that also, because simply because a person is melanated, simply because they're black in itself, don't make them Abarim, don't make them of Yasharal. So not every black person walking around is Yasharal, but we have a good clue as to who Yasharal are, because peoples have a tendency generations follow in the footsteps of their ancestors. You see, generations follow in the footsteps of their ancestors. And so pagans, people of pagan ancestry, tend to be drawn to paganism, right? Most assuredly, you will find that the majority of black people in churches in America and around the world, I believe you will find that the majority are people of Yasharal, you see, because we are drawn to who we are, but now we're drawn in a corrupted fashion because the truth have been taken from us and replaced with a lie, you see. And now we see the lie as truth, and that's what we're drawn to. It's the closest thing to the truth that we see, even though it's a corrupted lie, you know. So majority of the people in churches, and you can tell by the way we name our children. You find that most black people in churches over the years, whether they go to church or not, go down the line and you find that they name their children after people of the scriptures, even though those names are corrupted. But their intent is to name them because it's in them to do so, to seek after the hope, you know, it's in them, you know. So I think it's a good thing that you do. But also at the same time too, it's good to keep in mind that even not every melanated person is actually of Yasharal either. But it's a good thing to keep in mind and to encourage people to dig. I hope that's helpful, Aki. Yes, indeed. Yes, it can be challenging and hard. It can be. Yep, and what Akut Carmen just said, you gotta Yahuah tell us, Yahusha tell us not to cast our pearls among swine. So even in our sharing, we use wisdom, and I know and believe, I believe that Aki Rob does that. Yahuah has given him the wisdom to do that. You know. And so he causes us to know those who are his, you see. And even though they might be in ignorance, he'll cause us to know. And even some of those who are his, there are times when it's not for us to say anything. And he'll create the opportunity too when he wants us to speak. And I believe that's the case there with our key as he shared with our people. Yes, indeed. Oh, you're welcome, Daki. Praise Yahuwah. Well, you know what, Mashpaka, I've ran out of time. Just realized I got to go get my bond. I got to go get my son. He's at work. So I have officially ran myself out of time here. Again, it is my hope that our conversation, our discussion, and our examination of the scriptures here this evening, that you found it to be a baraka. I've certainly enjoyed this fellowship. I enjoy your input and all your comments and your questions, all that you bring and add to the fellowship. It's greatly appreciated. Mashpaka, I love and appreciate you all. And truly may Yahuwah continue to barak and to keep us and to grow us in his truth. Praise Yahuwah. Praise Father, family. Praise Yahuwah. Well, once again, we give Yahuwah praise, honor, and esteem. Abba Yahuwah, we thank and praise you for this time and for this opportunity. I pray, Yahuwah, that you would continue to barak and to keep us and to lead us in your way and according to your truth. May your favor continually be upon us. Keep us preserved as we go about and lead us in wisdom. Father, I pray for opportunities to share your truth, Abba. I pray, Yahuah, that you would lead, instruct, and guide, and may you continually be esteemed. Barak every household represented here and those who were not able to join us on this evening. Let your favor continually be upon your people. And Father, may we rest in you in Yahusha's name. Aman. Halahu Yahuah. Family, may Yahuah barak you and keep you. May Yahuah cause his face to shine upon you and show favor unto you. Uh, um, may Yahuah lift up his countenance upon you and give you his shalom. May the name of Yahuah, the preserving name of Yahuah, be upon you. Halahu Yahuah. Once again, family, the family on YouTube, I'm sorry I wasn't checking back and forth often enough. I'm working on setting up a program for broadcast that should be better than that should function better than the way I'm doing it now. Should enable me to kind of keep up more with YouTube. And so I'm looking forward to that. It should flow better. And so I'm looking forward to us being able to roll that out. And so, but once again, to the family on YouTube, I want to say shalom to you all. Love and appreciate you all. To the family on Fuse, the same. And family, I'm getting ready to, we're going to close out. We're going to close the room, and Yahuah willing, I'll be seeing you on Shabbat, Yahuah willing. So, shalom to you all, family.